Everyday life in North Korea, to a certain degree, revolves around the veneration of only one family. The pictures of the two eternal presidents, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il, grandfather and father of the current leader of North Korea, Kim Jong Un, adorn the walls of almost every family home and public institution in the country. To show nothing but absolute reverence to the regime is tantamount to treason, and North Korean citizens risk being sent to prison camps even for minor offences, which for some is a guaranteed death sentence. Almost every North Korean citizen wears a pin slightly above the heart as a symbol of absolute devotion to the leaders of the country. The most important national holidays of North Korea are the days of birth of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il. The cult of personality developed to such a strong degree, it is generally accepted that it even surpasses that of Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong. The conditions that led to the formation of such an extreme form of dictatorship and totalitarianism are multifaceted, and because of the isolationist policy of North Korea, a lot of questions regarding the country remain unanswered. But the process through which the cult of personality developed is to a certain degree known. To adequately understand this process, we will first focus on the early history of North Korea and the country's first political leader and one of its founders, the eternal president Kim Il-sung, father to Kim Jong Il and grandfather to Kim Jong Un. Following World War II, tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States of America formed almost immediately. The Cold War was well on its way, and the governments of each country sought ways to expand their spheres of influence. Korea found itself in the middle of their political skirmish. The Soviets wanted to establish a communist government in the north, and for that reason they needed a pro-Soviet communist figurehead. Kim Il-sung was almost a perfect choice. He was a fervent communist who led a resistance group in Manchuria under the command of the Communist Party of China and fought the Japanese Imperial Army on several occasions. He proved to be a relatively capable resistance leader who quickly made a name for himself. In time, the Japanese managed to suppress certain resistance groups and forced them to escape from Manchuria. For this reason, Kim Il-sung found refuge in the Soviet Union by 1940. He would stay there until the end of the Second World War. Later on, he was recommended to Stalin by certain Soviet officials as the potential leader of North Korea. In the end, he was chosen out of several candidates as the intended North Korean figurehead. From 1948 until the end of the Korean War in 1953, Kim Il-sung did not completely consolidate his power, and his governance was still under strong influence from the Soviet Union. Apart from Kim Il-sung, certain Soviet officials, most notably Stoikov, Terentiev, Fomich, had great influence on the governance of North Korea, at least in the country's early history. The relationship between the Soviet Union and Kim Il-sung was a mutually beneficial one. The Soviets needed Kim Il-sung to justify their presence in Korea and to maintain a strong influence on North Korean policy, while Kim Il-sung needed the political and organizational support of the Soviet Union, simply because he was a newcomer to Korean politics and was a relatively unknown figure to the people of North Korea. But in the end, it can be said that the Soviet Union underestimated Kim Il-sung's political skill and ambition. His cult of personality was quickly beginning to develop. The cult's relatively humble beginnings started as early as 1949 with the appearance of the first statues of Kim Il-sung. It also didn't take long for him to begin rewriting history. He started to present himself to the Korean people as a war hero who, with his Korean guerrilla faction, single-handedly defeated the Japanese army and liberated the Korean people from Japanese imperialism. In time, Kim Il-sung grew more independent from the Soviet Union by installing his political allies in the North Korean government. After Stalin's death in 1953, Nikita Khrushchev started the process of de-Stalinization of the communist bloc, which was followed by condemnation of strong cults of personality in communist countries. North Korea was especially criticized by Soviet officials in this regard, but Kim Il-sung's consolidation of power only made matters worse. In the late 1950s, Kim Il-sung purged most of his last remaining political enemies in the North Korean government. This would only lead to further concentration of power in the hands of only one man. In the end, the government of North Korea was structured in a way where almost nothing could be done without Kim Il-sung's direct approval. In order to achieve their goals or to procure a higher political status, many North Korean officials used gifts and propaganda to curry favor with Kim Il-sung, which in the end only brought Kim's personality cult to new extremes. The best example of this would probably be Kim Il-sung's relationship with his own son, Kim Jong Il. Although today we perhaps see the hereditary nature of the North Korean regime as common practice, in the 60s and 70s it was far from guaranteed for Kim Jong Il to succeed his father as the new leader of North Korea. There simply wasn't a precedent for dynastic succession in communist countries, nor did Marx and Engels look favorably on such ideas. What's more, Kim Jong Il had two main rivals to contend with: his uncle Kim Jong-il and his younger half-brother Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong Il used many tools at his disposal in order to secure his position. Above anything else, he used the North Korean propaganda apparatus to express admiration for his father and to curry favor with him. Many elements of the North Korean cult of personality stem from this period, such as the famed Grand Monument on Mansu Hill, the obligatory pins with Kim Il-sung's image, and numerous propaganda films that honor Kim Il-sung. All of these and much more were put in place by Kim Jong Il himself, only to fawn over his father. By 1980, his position as the successor of Kim Il-sung had been secured, in part thanks to his effective use of propaganda. His two rivals fell out of favor and were put aside. Kim Jong-il was sent abroad and became an ambassador, and Kim Jong-ju was relegated to a more ceremonial political position without any real power. Kim Jong-il would later continue to develop his own personality cult based on his father's legacy, but he would never gain the popularity among the North Korean populace that would rival Kim Il-sung's. Even today, many older North Korean defectors look favorably on Kim Il-sung's rule, and there are several reasons for this. Of course, Kim Il-sung would be more popular in part simply because he was the man that founded the country of North Korea and developed its main governing ideology. But there are other, perhaps less obvious reasons. Kim Jong-il had to contend with problems that were simply not present in Kim Il-sung's time, namely the interconnectedness of society enabled through modern technology. In spite of the isolationist policy of North Korea, more information about the outside world seeped into the country in the 21st century than ever before, and this would certainly limit, at least to a degree, the effectiveness of North Korean propaganda. Kim Il-sung had far greater control over what information reached the citizens of North Korea, and as such, he could use this fact to more effectively bolster his image or hide the failings of his governance. Kim Il-sung also ruled North Korea during the only period where its economy rivaled or even surpassed that of South Korea. From 1953 until the 70s, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, plagued by numerous ruthless autocratic regimes, and for a time, especially during the 60s, North Korea was economically a more developed country, largely thanks to its industrial complex. Of course, because of foreign investment, economic reforms, and the formation of a first stable democracy in 1987, South Korea would in time become one of the richest countries in the world. This stark difference between North and South would in time become more prominent, especially during the rule of Kim Jong Il, a fact that certainly in part tarnished his image. Kim Il-sung also did not rule long enough to see the full negative effects of his economic reforms. He died in 1994, just before the infamous North Korean famine that would last until 1998, and killed by some estimates at least 500,000 people. The causes of said famine are multifaceted, but in large part they can be traced back to the policies of Kim Il-sung and his regime. Even so, because of the fact that it was Kim Jong-il who was in power during the crisis, it would be his popularity that suffered, and not Kim Il-sung's. Even today, Kim Il-sung's personality cult is being kept alive by the North Korean propaganda apparatus. He is hailed as the greatest North Korean war hero ever, whose leadership saved the country from the bloodthirsty Americans and Japanese. He is celebrated as an artistic genius without rival, whose benevolence is equal to no other. He is the reason the North Korean people have jobs, food, and homes. And the list does not end there. The fact remains but the North Korean regime, now under the guidance of Kim Il-sung's grandson, is still going strong, despite of the sanctions and fervent international criticism. Kim Jong Un, aside from some minor economic and progressive reforms, largely continued in his grandfather's and father's footsteps. Many analysts have unsuccessfully tried to predict the downfall of the North Korean government, but the perhaps sometimes underestimated North Korean elite continues to rule unopposed. Whether the decades-long status quo will change is mostly unknown, but as things stand, the North Korean cult of personality continues to prosper hand in hand with the North Korean propaganda machine.